Laura woke up on a morning that looked no different from the hundreds before it. The alarm rang at 6:30, sharp and merciless. She dragged herself to the bathroom, turned on the light, and stared into the mirror. For a long moment, she did not recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale, her lips pressed into a thin line that seemed permanently etched there. She leaned closer, but her vision blurred. Her heart raced as if she had been running, though all she had done was open her eyes. She told herself she was just tired. But as she stood there, toothbrush dangling loosely in her hand, a thought crept in. Tiredness was supposed to fade after rest. This exhaustion felt different. It clung to her bones, to her breath, to the very air she tried to inhale. At the office, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and cold. Her computer screen glowed with unread emails, each one urgent, each one demanding. The sound of notifications pinged one after another, like small hammers striking the same spot in her chest. Around her, coworkers laughed about weekend plans, shared jokes across cubicles, and carried on with their lives. Laura forced herself to smile, to nod, to type replies. But inside, she felt only emptiness. She remembered how, years ago, work had once thrilled her. She had been proud of her ideas, eager to contribute, excited about each new challenge. She would stay up late not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Back then, her ambition felt like fire. Now it felt like smoke. The flame had gone out, leaving behind only the suffocating haze. Every small task seemed impossible. Writing an email took an eternity. Attending a meeting left her drained. Even deciding what to eat for lunch felt like another weight pressing on her shoulders. And yet she told no one. To her friends, she said she was just busy. To her boss, she said she was fine. But at night, when she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her heart whispered a truth she could no longer ignore. She was not fine at all. Laura was not simply tired. She was burnt out. But how do you explain burnout when it is not visible? You cannot show the ache of waking up with no will to begin the day. You cannot measure the heaviness of a smile that takes all your energy to wear. Burnout does not scream. It erodes quietly. It takes away joy, strips away meaning, and leaves behind a version of yourself that feels like a stranger. And so the real question emerges. Are we living our lives, or are we only surviving them? Have we mistaken constant busyness for true living? Forgetting that in the process, we are slowly losing ourselves. In this video, we will talk about burnout, not as a simple matter of being tired, but as the silent collapse that happens when your soul can no longer keep pace with the life you are forcing yourself to live. What is burnout, the hidden epidemic, and the science behind it? Burnout is not just being tired. It is not the kind of exhaustion that disappears after one good night's sleep or a weekend getaway. Burnout is a deeper collapse. The moment when your body and mind have been asked to run on empty for so long that even the simplest task feels impossible. Think of burnout like a candle that has been burning too brightly for too long. At first, the flame is beautiful, steady, purposeful. But without pause, the wax melts faster than it can be replenished. Eventually, the flame sputters, flickers, and dies. That is what burnout does to us. It drains the very fuel that keeps us alive, leaving only the melted remains of energy, joy, and motivation. Stress and burnout often get confused. Stress is like running a race you can still see the finish line for. You may feel your heart pounding, your body sweating, but there's adrenaline pushing you forward. Burnout, on the other hand, is running when there is no finish line in sight. It's the point where adrenaline can no longer carry you, where your body refuses to cooperate, and the thought of taking one more step feels unbearable. Stress is having too much on your plate. Burnout is no longer having the appetite to eat at all. Science explains this collapse clearly. When you face stress, your body activates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. Cortisol and adrenaline flood your system, sharpening your focus, quickening your heartbeat, keeping you alert. This is healthy in short bursts. It is your body's way of keeping you alive in dangerous or demanding situations. But when stress becomes chronic, when the deadlines never stop, when the responsibilities pile endlessly, When rest feels like a luxury instead of a necessity, the same system that once protected you turns against you. Constant cortisol disrupts your sleep, weakens your immune system, and interferes with digestion. Your brain, bathed in stress hormones, struggles to regulate memory and emotions. It's like a computer with too many tabs open. The fan is whirring, the battery is overheating, and eventually the entire system freezes. That is burnout, the shutdown after prolonged overdrive. Your body whispers at first, "You're tired." You ignore it. Then it raises its voice. You can't sleep, you're irritable, you're anxious. Still, you push through. Finally, it screams by shutting down. You lose motivation, creativity, even the ability to feel joy. What once excited you now feels like a burden. The world becomes gray. Research backs this up. Studies from the World Health Organization describe burnout as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It is marked by 3 dimensions: exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced professional efficacy. In simpler words, you feel drained, disconnected, and doubtful of your own worth. But here's the truth we rarely hear. Burnout is not a personal weakness. It is not a sign that you are incapable or ungrateful. Burnout is a survival mechanism. It is your body's way of forcing you to stop when you refuse to listen. It is the wisdom of your biology saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And this matters because, left unchecked, burnout doesn't just steal your productivity. It eats away at your sense of self. You begin to believe you are lazy, unmotivated, or failing, when in reality, you are simply depleted. This misunderstanding traps many of us in shame, keeping us silent when what we truly need is support and rest. Recognizing burnout for what it is, a biological and emotional signal, not a flaw, is the first step to healing. It reframes the story from "I'm broken" to "my body is asking for care." Just like the candle needs to be protected from burning out too soon, you too need boundaries, recovery, and balance to keep your flame alive. Signs you're experiencing burnout. Have you ever stared at your screen for hours and realized you haven't typed a single word? You try to push yourself, but your body feels like it is made of stone, and your mind refuses to move. That heavy stillness, that invisible wall, is often the first whisper of burnout. The most obvious sign is exhaustion that never seems to leave you. You sleep, but wake up as if you never rested. You take a weekend off, yet by Monday morning, your body drags itself back to the same fatigue. It is not the kind of tiredness a nap can fix. It is a deep depletion, a well that has run dry. Then comes the hollowing out of meaning. Work that once gave you pride starts to feel pointless. You finish tasks mechanically, ticking boxes, but feeling no satisfaction. Even small victories taste like dust. When your inner voice asks, "What's the point?" Again and again, something inside is breaking down. Perhaps you notice indifference creeping into your life. The hobbies you once loved gather dust. The book on your nightstand lies unopened. A message from a close friend feels like another burden instead of comfort. Burnout has a way of stealing your joy quietly, replacing it with numbness. Your body too begins to speak. The headaches that return like unwelcome guests. The sudden knots in your stomach after a long day. The restless heartbeat that quickens without reason. These are not random complaints. They are the body's alarm bells, telling you it can no longer carry the weight of your pace. And sometimes the most painful sign is silence. The silence of not recognizing yourself anymore. The laughter you used to share feels far away. The curiosity that once lit up your eyes has dimmed. You go through your days as if you are on autopilot, present in form but absent in spirit. If you see yourself in these lines, then perhaps burnout has already found its way into your life. It rarely arrives with thunder. Instead, it creeps in quietly, turning energy into exhaustion, passion into emptiness, and joy into indifference. Recognizing it is not weakness. It is the first step to reclaiming your strength. How to heal: practical and gentle steps. Healing from burnout is not about quick fixes. It is a slow return to yourself, a way of remembering that you were human before you were useful. You cannot push your way out of exhaustion with more effort. What you need is gentleness, patience, and a quiet kind of courage. Laura discovered this when her body finally refused to cooperate, when no amount of coffee could keep her eyes open, when even the things she once loved felt like heavy burdens. She had no choice but to try a different way of living. Rest without guilt. The first step was the hardest for Lara, to rest without guilt. For so many years, she lived with the belief that rest was something you had to deserve, like a luxury granted only after every box on the to-do list was ticked. If she lay down in the afternoon, her mind would whisper accusations. You're being lazy. You're wasting time. Others are moving ahead while you're standing still. So she pushed herself through fatigue, drinking more coffee, stretching her nights longer, telling herself this was strength. But deep inside, it was only depletion dressed up as discipline. It was not until her body began to protest, headaches, trembling hands, nights of shallow sleep, that she realized the truth. The absence of rest was not a badge of honor, but the quiet erosion of her own life. Research in neuroscience shows that rest is not laziness, but the brain's most essential repair. Sleep restores hormonal balance, consolidates memory, and strengthens the immune system. Without it, no ambition can survive for long. So Lara made a small, radical choice. She gave herself permission to close her eyes at noon, to go to bed early even if emails were unanswered, to sit on the balcony and breathe without apology. At first, the guilt crept back, whispering again. But slowly she noticed that after real rest, her thoughts were lighter, her emotions softer, her patience deeper. She began to see that rest is not a prize you win after working hard enough. It is the ground you must stand on before you can walk again. Reconnect with your body. Once Lara allowed herself to rest, the next step was to return to her own body, the place she had lived in for years but treated like a machine. She realized how often she had pushed it past exhaustion, silencing every signal of pain or fatigue with caffeine and deadlines. So she began with something gentle, an evening walk, no more than 10 minutes around her block. At first it felt almost pointless, too small to matter. But then she noticed the fresh air cooling her skin, the rhythm of her footsteps grounding her, the steady expansion of her lungs with each breath. For the first time in a long while, she felt her body not as a burden, but as a quiet companion that had been waiting for her attention. Psychological research confirms what Lara was slowly discovering, that gentle physical activity reduces cortisol, calms the nervous system, and restores balance to an overworked mind. She added short yoga sessions, sometimes nothing more than lying on the mat, hand on her stomach, watching her breath rise and fall. On difficult days, when her thoughts spun too fast to be still, she reached for her notebook and wrote down whatever poured out, fragments of worry, unfinished sentences, even just scribbles. The simple act of transferring the chaos inside her mind onto paper made her body loosen, as if she had set down a weight. Reconnecting with the body, she realized, is not about performance or achieving another goal. It is not about steps counted or calories burned. It is about presence, returning to the ground beneath her feet, to the inhale and exhale that has carried her through every moment of survival. Each small act of listening reminded her, you are here, you are alive, and your body is not an obstacle to overcome, but a home to come back to. Set gentle boundaries. As her strength slowly returned, Lara began to notice something she had overlooked for years. How quickly her energy drained whenever she said yes to things she didn't truly want to do. At first, she blamed her exhaustion entirely on overwork, but soon she realized burnout was also the result of something quieter, more subtle, the inability to protect her own inner space. Boundaries had always sounded cold to her, almost like shutting people out. But over time, she discovered that healthy boundaries are not brick walls. They are soft, movable doors that can open or close depending on what feels safe. Instead of pushing love away, boundaries actually allow it to flow in healthier ways, free of resentment or silent exhaustion. Research in emotional resilience has shown that people who practice boundary setting experience lower rates of anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. When you say yes to everything, you spread yourself thin until nothing of you remains. But when you honor your limits, you create a rhythm of giving and resting, of connection and solitude. Lara practiced in small steps. She declined a meeting that wasn't essential, reminding herself that her time was valuable. She gently told a friend she needed to reschedule coffee because her body was tired, even though she feared being misunderstood. Each no came with a rush of guilt, her heart pounding as if she had broken an invisible rule. But with every act of honesty, she felt a little lighter, as if reclaiming pieces of herself she had long abandoned. Slowly, she learned the truth. Every time she said no to something that drained her, she was saying yes to something more precious: her health, her peace, her self-respect. Boundaries were not about rejection. They were about protection. And in protecting her energy, Laura was finally learning how to protect her life. Redefine your values. In the silence that boundaries gifted her, Laura found herself facing questions she had long avoided. What truly matters to me? What am I working so hard for? And most importantly, are these dreams even mine, or have I been carrying someone else's definition of success? Burnout often isn't just about exhaustion from tasks, but from living a life misaligned with one's heart. Psychologists call this value incongruence, the painful gap between what you deeply care about and what you actually spend your days doing. One evening, Laura opened her journal, letting her pen wander without rules. She wrote about her love for painting, a passion she had buried under deadlines. She wrote about her longing for slow mornings where she could drink tea without rushing. She wrote about her dream of building relationships that felt nourishing rather than constantly networking to add names to a resume. As the pages filled, she realized how many of her daily choices were driven by fear. Fear of falling behind, fear of disappointing others, fear of not being enough. Bit by bit, she began to redefine her values. It wasn't about abandoning ambition. It was about choosing ambitions that honored her essence. Instead of chasing every opportunity, she asked, "Does this align with my truth? Will this bring me closer to joy or further into emptiness?" Each new value became a compass point, guiding her away from noise and closer to authenticity. For the first time in years, Laura felt a quiet steadiness inside her, a sense that even if the world kept spinning fast, she no longer had to. She had found her anchor. Seek support. Finally, Laura allowed herself to reach for others. Burnout thrives in silence, convincing you that you must endure alone. But healing grows in connection. Research shows that social support is one of the strongest predictors of resilience and recovery from stress. Laura began by confiding in a friend she trusted, sharing her struggles without trying to make them sound smaller. She joined an online community where others spoke openly about exhaustion and healing. When her anxiety became too heavy, she reached out to a therapist. Each conversation reminded her that her pain was not a weakness, but a common thread that connected her to humanity. Support did not fix everything, but it gave her strength to keep going. Healing is rarely dramatic. It is not the moment you leap out of bed fully restored. It is the quiet decision to rest, to breathe, to listen, to say no, to ask for help. It is the patience to begin again, even when progress feels invisible. As Laura discovered, you do not need to run immediately. You only need to learn how to sit with yourself without judgment. That is where recovery begins, not in speed, but in softness. And perhaps one day, without realizing it, you will notice that your laughter returns more easily, that your mornings no longer feel like battles, that your body no longer trembles under invisible weight. That day is proof that burnout did not win, you did. Burnout is not the end. It is not a sign that you are broken beyond repair or that your strength has abandoned you. Burnout is a quiet reminder, a whisper from your body and soul asking you to stop running so far from yourself. It is life's way of pulling you back, of saying, you cannot keep living on borrowed energy. You need to come home. Many of us resist this truth. We think rest means weakness, or slowing down means failure. But what if the opposite is true? What if burnout is not the wall that stops you, but the doorway that leads you inward? Every flame burns out when it is starved of fuel, and you are no different. You cannot light up the world if you refuse to keep your own fire alive. The truth is, the world will always demand more. More hours, more output, more of you than you can give. But your worth is not measured by exhaustion. Your beauty does not bloom in overwork. It grows in the quiet moments when you dare to breathe, when you let yourself be held by silence, when you allow life to be simple again. Remember this. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is rest. Rest is not an interruption to your life. It is part of your life. And choosing to rest is choosing to honor yourself. So, if you recognize yourself in these words, I invite you to leave a comment below. Your story, however small, might be the light someone else needs. Follow or arise, and together we will learn how to heal and return to ourselves. And if this message touched you, do not hesitate to share it with a friend, because maybe, just maybe, they are waiting for this gentle reminder too.